Well, there is something about this state's culture which makes us apparently far more receptive to the idea that every single person in this state ought to have decent, affordable health care, apparently, than in other states. Now, to some extent, I fault my own party. I think we did a lousy job of communicating what that was all about. You know, getting rid of pre-existing conditions, keeping your kids on the policy until they're 26 are all good things. But that's no powerful message. What's the powerful message? 100 million Americans either have no health insurance or very little health insurance. And 90% of them are working or members of working families. They're not loafing, they're not on public assistance, you're on welfare, you get Medicaid. These are working folks, no health insurance. And when they get so sick that they can't stand up, they end up in the emergency room at about 10 times the cost of going to see a doctor. And we haven't been saying this. I mean, if we went out and took a poll tomorrow and asked the American people, should working people and their families have decent, affordable health care, 93% say yes. So why haven't we been saying this? Why haven't we been saying? No wonder we've got working folks seriously thinking about voting for the other side. You got to tell them this. As far as I'm concerned, when I got my bill through the legislature, I must have done 200 press events. I never did one without a working person or working family next to me who spoke and talked about what it was like to try to survive without decent, affordable health insurance. But here, I think the overwhelming majority of folks in Massachusetts say, hey, we want this. It's an important part of who we are, and we'll get it. And we did. Not once, but twice, as it turned out. So I don't think you're going to get that same sentiment in a lot of other states, as best I can understand, for reasons I don't know. Because in point of fact, 93% of the people, the American people, do want working folks and their families to get health care. There we are. Why are we different? Well, maybe different culture, a tradition of pulling together, collaborating together, doing things together.
And with the implementation of the healthcare reform on the federal level, at least I get a sense that when we pioneered it here in Massachusetts, you know, I think that everyone, it's a smaller state geographically, a lot of hospitals, people have family members maybe. It was an easier sell to this state, I feel. Do you think that other places in the country might have a different state culture that they're going to have a hard time adopting?
It's preposterous to suggest that on a state-by-state basis we can do this. It just isn't going to work. So I don't know what would happen in these other places, and yet I think the Massachusetts system clearly now is a model. I don't think there's any question that the Affordable Care Act moved more easily through Congress. It wasn't easy because there was a state that was doing it. Now, of course, we've got to deal with the cost control side of things, and the press is trying to do that. But I mean, that's the wonder of the federal system, that you do have individual states that move out in front. But at some point, it seems to me, it's time to say every working American and his or her family going to have decent, affordable health care. The country has changed in many ways, in some cases for the better. But I don't think you could use, that debate now. I mean, it's a different context and stuff, but many of the same issues, environmental issues. I don't know that we were talking about climate change back then, but we were certainly talking about pollution. So it's pretty much the same agenda. I think we did pretty well. The problem was my decision simply to remain mute while I was getting whacked, incorrectly, by the way, and inaccurately, on this furlough stuff. But look, it was my own fault. I mean, the most liberal furlough program in America in 1988 was the furlough program in the Reagan-Bush federal prison system. I don't think Bush even knew it. Reagan himself had a furlough program as governor of California, and two of his furloughees went out and murdered people. And in the case of the relatively new facility, or at the time, the furlough program that was part of the Reagan-Bush administration, one of their furloughees went out and murdered a young pregnant mother in the Southwest. So, but I never said that. Nobody's fault but my own. If the other guy's pounding you on this stuff, and he's got that kind of record, you better tell people. Otherwise, they'll start believing what they're seeing.
When we go back and look at different presidential elections as a timetable, one of the notable things from your race was the Benson-Quayle debate.
Yeah, yeah.
Now they're doing other assessments. Oh, this happened during this election and whatnot. Do you think that once we get a little distance from this Romney-Obama race, that there'll be something significantly characteristic? I would say.
It's hard to say. It's hard to say. I mean, clearly, if Obama had done as well in the first debate as he did in the second, too, this race would have been over weeks ago. But I've been there. Sometimes you go in, you don't really go in with a strategy, you're just going to answer the questions. And I suspect he might have been a little thrown off because all of a sudden Romney was articulating positions that seemed to have very little to do with what he'd been saying in the past. You know, whether this is etch-a-sketch or rope-a-dope or whatever it is, I don't know. But I think maybe the president was taken aback a little bit. And look, I've screwed up as much as anybody. But when you go into these debates, you have to go in with a strategy. Ideally, what do you want people to come away with? And that means you have to be focusing on that strategy, that theme, even as you're answering the questions. And I think he just walked in and said, well, answer questions. And people were just not impressed. And nobody accused Mitt Romney of not being able to talk and being articulate. That's not my beef with him. But when you give him that kind of an opening and you yourself are just kind of matter-of-factly responding, I think that's the thing that hurt him and gave Romney a new lease on life.